Hi, I'm Richard Feldman, creator of the Rock programming language and a full-time Rust developer at Zed. I created this course on C because I wanted everyone to get the experience of what it feels like to program really close to the metal. In this course, we'll start off with the very basics of hello world and seeing what CPU instructions hello world can really be doing. Then we're going to build up to building a static HTTP server, from string manipulation to file I/O, network I/O, and then bringing it all together to build something that actually works and is blazing fast. By the end of the course, you'll understand how to deal with C's unsafe nature, but also how it can make your code unbeatably fast. So why is C still popular? The main number one reason is just it gives you access to the maximum possible performance. This is really because, again, it's really zero overhead programming. It's the ability to get down as close to the metal as the operating system will let you. Just shy of micromanaging registers in assembly, and not because it does amazing optimizations, although it does lots of those too. It is much more ergonomic than assembly. If you've ever tried writing an assembly program by hand, I don't recommend it. It's an exercise in it's a learning experience. I'll say that. And of course, although C++ was designed to be in many ways an improvement over C++, C++ is extraordinarily complicated, and the compile times are massively longer than they are for C. So C is still popular even in a world where C++ exists, even though C++ was designed to be the improvement over C, because C++ added so much complexity and so much longer compile times that a lot of people are like, yeah, I know C and C++, and I prefer C. One really direct example of what C gets you in terms of performance is what I'm going to call the local static HTTP server performance Olympics. And this is not a real competition. This is very unscientific, and it was done by me very quickly by measuring some different static HTTP servers and just loading up a download of the front-end master's website and seeing how fast they were able to load it into the browser. Very unscientific, but also a little bit of fun. So in third place with the bronze, we had Node.js. So this is Node's HTTP server package. This has about 2.3 million weekly downloads. It's extremely popular. It's the most popular way to do a static HTTP server in the Node.js ecosystem. In second place with the silver medal, we have Rust. Rust's most popular alternative is simple HTTP server. Rust, much smaller ecosystem than Node.js, only 52,000 all-time downloads, let alone weekly. And then in first place with the gold medal, the fastest local HTTP server among the ones that I tried is written in C, and it is the about 300 lines of C code we write in this workshop with only the standard library and no third-party dependencies whatsoever. So this is kind of an example of why C is still popular. I mean, granted, we're not talking about blisteringly fast differences here. It's all of these are about under 10 milliseconds of response time to load all the different assets statically. But nevertheless, it is the case that pretty consistently you can see that even though we're not really I didn't sit down and benchmark this other than this silly little performance Olympics thing. I didn't sit down and performance optimize the C thing. These are very mature, well-written, well-established, high designed to be high performance HTTP servers written in Rust, which has a reputation for being a very fast language, and Node.js, which granted has a lot more overhead than Rust or C. And still, just this example that I just made for this workshop, just by doing some basic bread and butter, just do things the way that kind of C encourages, we're able to get really, really fast performance just because C is just really, really not adding anything, even compared to Rust. Let's go through these solutions real quick. So to begin with, we've just got this. We'll just make sure that's working okay. Looks good. So now we can go ahead and delete this part. So first thing we're going to do is replace the 15 with a call to strlen of header. So again, remembering that strlen is going to receive this actual memory address. So strlen takes an integer. The recurring theme that we're going to see throughout this course is a lot of C functions actually just take integers. They just might have fancier types, but at runtime, they're all integers. How does it know where the end of the string is to calculate the length? Well, it's just going to keep walking until it gets to a 0 byte. Now we do have an error here, which is basically saying hey, this is an undeclared library function. Fair enough. And the solution to that is we're just going to go grab string.h, and then we're all set. So this should do exactly the same thing. The only difference is that now it's computing the length of the string. Normally this would be at runtime, but after optimizations, this is actually going to be done at compile time, and we won't actually have to wait for it to walk that at runtime. Now that we're using strlen, we can mess this up by adding a \0 in here somewhere. So that's essentially going to insert, we're going to have 3 normal bytes, then we're going to have a 0 byte. We're going to have a bunch of other bytes, but because write is give me how many bytes you want to write. Now it's going to truncate that. It's just going to say HTT, blah, okay. And notice that this affects not only write, but also printf, because printf is automatically doing the thing that we are now doing manually in write. In other words, printf is under the hood doing that same thing, like just keep marching along the array until we hit a 0 byte and then stop. So if you put a 0 byte in the middle of your string, printf, and then printf it, it's just like, yeah, I guess that's where the string ends. I hit the 0. So there might be more stuff after it that you kind of intended to be part of the string, but printf and strlen both are just like, I don't know, I saw a null terminator, so I guess that's the end of the string. Again, an example of C, there are no guardrails on this stuff with C. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and just put that back, though, so now we can actually see our real HTTP header. And now we're going to change this %s to %zud, and there is going to be a little compiler warning, but we're just going to ignore that. And basically what this is doing is now, over here, we're printing out the actual string, but in printf, with the ZUD, that's saying like, okay, treat this as a 64-bit integer. And it's like, yeah, I'll just print that out for you. Now, in this case, you might notice that when I print this out, I'm seeing slightly different numbers here. So they all start with like 4, 3, something, something, something. But they do actually end up with, I guess we don't need the ZU. Sorry, we don't need the ZUD. I guess it's just ZU. Because there was a little D on the end there. But yeah, so this address does actually change a little bit. And the reason for that is that basically what we are seeing is that the memory address is slightly different. Now you might be wondering, why is the memory address different? Like, isn't the compiler deterministic? Like, why is the compiler generating a slightly different memory address for string, this same string in the final binary? Why would it be generating a slightly different address? And the answer is actually, it's not. What's actually happening here is that there is a security feature that operating systems will do called address space randomization, I think, something like that. At any rate, the point is that because a lot of exploits will actually try to do things like what we did in part 1, where we like intentionally read too much memory and we're trying to like get secrets. In order to try to defeat hackers that are trying to do that type of thing on purpose, what they'll do is they'll actually randomize the offsets of things a little bit. So you take the same exact compiled binary and you run it in the operating system. The operating system will just move the addresses around a little bit and also go in and like tweak whenever the binary goes and like asks for things, just to intentionally try to mess around with hackers who are trying to be like, oh, I know if I put in this magic number right here, it's gonna like get the right offset. I know where the secret is like exactly 78,000 bytes after this thing. So if I inject this perfect number right here, then I get the secret right there, and then I can continue on. They're trying to thwart the hackers by introducing randomness so that the addresses are unpredictable and therefore hard to like do malicious things to. So that's what's happening here. It's not that the binary itself is like the compiled binary is putting these in different places, but rather that that's the operating system trying to defeat hackers. The Linux version, as you see from the docs, if you went and looked those up, we send the 2 file descriptors first. Now, if you look in the macOS docs, one of the things that's most striking about the difference here is that the Linux one just returns how many bytes were successfully sent. So this is very similar to what we saw with like read. We'll return how many bytes were actually read. Also, if you like try to write, potentially it might not write all the bytes if like the thing that it's trying to write to like had some sort of limit set up. Same kind of deal here, where basically it's saying like, hey, here is like, you told me that you wanted to send this many bytes, but it's possible that I sent fewer bytes than that. Now this is very important to know because we actually do want to like potentially put these in a loop. So this is actually how we're doing the chunking here. We're basically saying like, okay, if you didn't send all the bytes that I told you to send, that's fine. I'm just gonna like decrement how many bytes we have remaining to send, go back to the top of the loop and just keep doing it again over and over and over again until all the bytes finally get successfully sent. Now, how do we get this actual bytes sent value? This is one of the ways where Linux and macOS APIs differ. So in the Linux one, send file just returns it. And then our job to detect whether or not sending failed is the usual check if the return value was -1. If it was, if send failed, then okay, fine, we like break. This is a pretty unfortunate like scenario where if this were like a production HTTP server as opposed to just like a little local one, we might want to try to do some extra work to try to like more gracefully handle these errors. But yeah, so we need to know whether sending failed, and we also need to know how many bytes were sent. And the macOS API for this, or the BSD based one, very different. So here we're actually doing basically the number of bytes that were sent is actually equal to stats.st size, or at least we're kind of like assuming that as the starting point. And then we send the address of that, and basically it will use that both for getting like what is the actual size, like what is the actual number of bytes that you want to send, and then also when we call send file, it will, after reading that to see how many bytes we want to send, it will override it with how many bytes it actually sent. Again,
funky C APIs. I look at this and I say, I think the Linux one kind of makes more sense to me. This seems like nicer to use, but the BSD authors decided to do it this way, and so if you want to do it on Mac OS, this is what you got to use. So at the end of this, we do that, and then we've actually sent all the stuff that we want. Very cool. I'm just going to copy this over here from the solutions, and now finally we have our index, the root page. This still works. If I click on the blog link, this still works. And the cool part is now if I go to the I've downloaded this locally. This is basically a copy of the Frontend Masters website that I just downloaded all the HTML and CSS and all the fonts and everything into my local directories. And there it is. Beautiful. The entire frontendmasters.com website served locally, blazing fast. See about 300 lines of code that we built from scratch in the course of this workshop using no third-party dependencies, just raw, close to the metal operating system stuff. And it all works. Look at that.